Welcome everyone to Be Wise. You're listening to Kata Edwards-Pierre, your moderator and host. And I'll take a few moments just to let you know what Be Wise is about, which is focusing on us all being well, being informed, being safe, and being empowered. We're in a time of change and transition. And the thing is that transition happens all the time from moment to moment, but now we all feel it together. So we're taking this opportunity to share lots of information, lots of tips and resources. And I have some great people in this space right now who are willing to do that. We have quite a few panelists today that are going to share some great gems, and then we're going to open up to discussion on the theme of empowerment. How do we stay empowered in these different areas of our lives? Who do we turn to? How do we get there while being shut in? So I'll start the floor with Steffi Black, Mrs. Steffi Black, who is with us to speak on being kind to ourselves, being kind to others. She's a kindness advocate. And she's also a life and career coach. Steffi.
Thank you, Kata. Pleasure to be here again and share on the topic of empowerment, the process of becoming stronger and more confident. And one of the ways when I work with clients as a life and career coach is deal with grounding themselves in new routines and rituals. We're in a new type of living environment, and so it's so important to look around you and decide what are your capabilities. If you're not working, what is your time allotted to? If you are working, what is your time allotted to in terms of mental health and feeling well and empowered? And one of the ways we get to be empowered is by creating new grounding rituals. And I actually have a mini plan that I share with clients as well too, where you spread out your day in terms of health and wellness coming into it. So if you've wanted to try meditation, taking a moment to try a new meditation program. If you have anxiety, learning from a teacher who deals with anxiety. Right now there are many free courses, so whatever you've needed to work upon, try to take this time from not commuting and having more time to do things that are healthy and empowering for you, and start with just one thing. Nothing happens overnight. We have to be kind to ourselves, as Kata mentioned. And if it's just one new thing you can incorporate, just do one new thing and watch the change happen slowly. They say what you practice, you become. Take 17 seconds to focus on your preferred future. That 17 seconds can become a minute, can become an hour, can become a day. So there's just a sample tip of life and career empowerment by creating a new plan with new routines and rituals.
Thank you so much, Steffi. And what I will do now
Pleasure.
is just give people a quick look at this beautiful information sheet that you've been so gracious to share with us here. So looking through, you'll see just an effective, quick capture of all the information that Steffi was just kind enough to share. We will be sharing that with you on Steffi's behalf here because there's some great info there. And of course, you'll also be able to connect with us and figure out how do we get a hold of Steffi, because that's already happened. So thank you so much, Steffi. It was fantastic. Once again, your tips. Something that you mentioned about being kind to yourself. There are quite a few areas where we don't quite do that. A number of different areas, all of which are covered by our panelists here today. But I'm going to move over to nutrition. The reason why is because I know for me, sometimes what I eat and what I put in my mouth is directly reflective of how kind I am being to myself. You know, so our Wiseman, our nutritionist and holistic nutritionist at that, if you wouldn't mind taking the floor and talking a little bit about how we can empower ourselves through nutrition.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So we can empower ourselves by making healthy choices, by choosing what we put into our bodies. We can actually heal ourselves through diet. So what I've noticed over the years of working and practicing and seeing clients is how we feel about ourselves determines the choices we make. Our attitude is what defines us, not the excess weight or our circumstances. If you feel as though you're worth it, you're going to make healthy choices. And you know, getting enough nutrients in your diet, drinking enough water, not doing things that stress your body are really key, and looking after yourself, looking after ourselves. So basically we eat who we are. And I know that's kind of complicated in some ways, but in some ways it's kind of, it came to me when I was writing my book, Feed Your Body, Feed Your Soul, because it's true. How we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem really determines what the choices we're going to make and how we feel.
So well said and so true. And you could almost say that to be true about every single area, which is why I find it so fascinating that we're all gathering together to do this, not only in the way that we talk to ourselves, like Steffi has covered, or what we put in our mouth, but also the way we move our bodies, which brings us to Michelle. You know, the movement or lack of it can be reflective, directly reflective of what state of mind that we're in. So I'd love for you, Michelle, who is an exercise gerontologist and focuses on health and wellness. Perfect. If you wouldn't mind speaking to that for a few minutes.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. And what I was focusing on today were actually the 3 tips or 3 keys for enhancing your physical and mental health. And they work beautifully together, very synergistically. I've been in the health and wellness space now for well over 20 years. And even if you only practiced 1 or 2 of them, you would be ahead of the game. But if you practice 3, you actually could be unstoppable. So our 3 keys, and I think more people might be interested in this one, is movement or exercise. Done regularly and consistently, it can transform your life. And I've seen it firsthand. And there's plenty of indoor and outdoor options that we have right now that we can talk about later. The second thing is mindset. And that, of course, is in here, right? It's the things that we think and say to ourselves, our self-talk, our soundtrack, that loop of thinking that we have going on. We ideally want that to be very kind and loving, but often it's not. And we have to put a stop to that. So there are simple and effective ways that you can do that as well. And the last thing is breathing, or your breath. Too many people breathe very shallowly. We want to actually do deep belly breathing, which is like pretending that your tummy is like a balloon. So every time you inhale through your nose, your balloon or your belly moves out and then it comes back in again. That's going to help you feel a lot more calm and a lot more rested. And again, that's something that I think is easier to practice actually when you're lying down, but that's something that can be practiced just here while you're sitting.
Oh, I love that. I love that movement, frame of mind. You know, the breathing piece is so key. So I appreciate what you shared there. And that actually brings me over to Elise Marie, because I find that when it comes to tensions in our body, breathing can help release it. But there are some tensions that stay put. And breathing, the diaphragmatic breathing that you were describing, Michelle, breathing into the belly is perfect. I would like, Elise Marie, if you could just speak, how do we release other tensions? Like I told you, I got one right here that's just not going away. But I mean, how do we do that ourselves if we can't get to you physically as a massage therapist?
So using the tools that your massage therapist, physiotherapist, chiropractor, any sort of manual practitioner has given you, 9 times out of 10, we're going to give you some home care, which is basically homework for you to do by yourself. So if you have a list of exercises that, you know, oh, I'm going to do that every single day, I'm going to do this 20 minutes a day, I have all the time in the world, set yourself up for success. Empower yourself by giving yourself small goals. You're not going to do the exercises for half an hour every single day this week. It's not going to happen. Children are going to come into the mix. You have to make dinner, some sort of random, you know, interruption in your day is going to happen and it's not going to get accomplished. You may feel badly about yourself and then throw your goals out the window. So my points for today would be small goals. Take pieces of your exercise routine and aim to get them done 2 to 3 times in the week. Small goals, just so that they're achievable. The other thing that you can do, taking those exercises that your therapist has given you, or if you can reach out to them now. I was mentioning earlier, I had a 20-minute conversation with a client yesterday in regards to a new pain that had come up and she didn't know what to do. So we talked about exercises that we had done before. Teaching somebody else to do those exercises with you helps to reinforce them in your mind, but then you're also sharing your experience with somebody else in your circle, whether it's your child, your partner, you know, a friend. If you can do it over a Skype or a Zoom call, having somebody with you or teaching somebody to do it with you is going to reinforce the pattern in your mind. And then you're also sharing self-care with somebody else. And that in and of itself feels really good to help others.
Wow. Thank you, Elise Marie, who, by the way, teaches this as well, and as well as practices as a registered massage therapist. Wow, today I'm just not talking properly. Anyway, you brought up a couple of points that brings me today. One, just having all these things that come up during the day, and it kind of squeezes that self-care piece out of the day. And one of those things, as much as we love them, can be our children, whether we have children as pet companions or children who are human children, or people that we're caring for that are older and need a lot of help and support. I'd love for you to speak on this piece, because the self-care component is so fundamental to us being able to care for others.
Well, today I've created a slide for everyone to see, a little presentation. I'm just gonna share my screen so that you can all see it, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.
So I'm going to speak through it. It's hi to everybody. The message I want to give to people out there that feel alone mentally, even though you might have family or friends around you, and you're watching these table talks and browsing social media outlets that are offering free support, and you wonder how someone who doesn't know you and can't see you, how you wonder how they can even care. And it's because we're all connected. And as each of us are tiny droplets, it's almost like we're tiny droplets, and together we create an ocean that grows and supports each other as a whole. If it wasn't for those droplets of people who helped me through my trauma, I might not be here to tell you that I'm a part of that ocean of people who care and truly know that you are important. Your life is important, and I hope that if you are not now, that one day you are safe. Something that I can share, it's nothing new, I heard Steffi mention it earlier, but I know it took years for me to even try, is healing meditation. Through music, and for some voice and music, a seed of growth can be planted in a place that only you are aware. Kata is attaching links for me for two of my favorite sleep meditations, and I'm very picky about the sounds that surround me while I go to bed. So research and find what suits you to help your inner strength grow. And there are other links as well to guide you to empowerment, but please do so safely. If you are unable to listen to sleep meditation or any meditation during the day, then if you can, I would suggest any music that lifts your spirit, gives you strength, and helps you to cultivate that love and resiliency within yourself to get through some difficult times. And man, I tell you, like singing, no, I used to yell Mary J. Blige's music and so many others, and it helped me release so much pain. So one of my favorite songs, by the way, is This Woman's Work, which is slightly playing in the background. And I use it to uplift you and empower and build resiliency. So that's my offering. Kate is going to also offer some links that can go along, some links that can help you with kids meditation. She's going to offer those links for the children and some more for myself as well. So thank you guys. Thank you for my time, Kata.
Thank you so much. The links are shared. Take a look in the chat. That was absolutely beautiful. Trauma recovery and resiliency is also part of this space, and it's actually what True to Soul stands for and about, being together and helping each other through. And that spoke very loudly, and I appreciate the time that you took in sharing that very much. Day. Now, you brought up some points that I feel are directly relevant to a few things, but the other piece is mental wellness, like understanding what tools we can use, what's out there for support for us. When we can't access someone immediately, what are things that we can do to balance and to seek resiliency? And that brings me down to Candace Hamilton Miller. When it comes to psychotherapy, oftentimes we feel we have to go out to someone's office in order to get that done. But if we can do massage therapy through online and phone, I'm pretty sure you have some tools you can offer as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about the topic that you chose of empowerment, and I think that's a really critical piece when we think about mental health. A lot of it comes back to, what does it mean to feel empowered? And empowerment often comes from recognizing what we can control in our world and what we can't control. And right now, we're in a situation that feels very out of control. Everybody is struggling. Everybody is facing this very differently. Everybody has a very different reality within their home. And so it's important to recognize what we can and cannot control within our world right now. And as we do that, we come to a place of acceptance of where we are, and that allows us to grow into the space that we're in by finding our new normal. Now, a lot of these things, some of the wonderful people we've been speaking with have already touched on, but that idea of having some control, finding your new normal, and then the importance of those mental wellness elements, like how is your sleep? How is your food and nutrition? How are you coping? I love the dancing strategy. I'm a big fan of a dance off in the kitchen when everybody's just losing their minds. Breathing is really important. And breathing, if you're not into meditation, even just 3 really good deep breaths, focusing on the exhale, from my perspective, is the most important thing. And then for how you kind of work through some of this stuff, because sometimes when you're trapped in a house with people, they aren't the people you can talk to about what's going on in your head, because it's about them, and that's okay. So what I often recommend is make sure you have a journal. Find a way to get it out. One of the things we know with mental health and wellness is really that what happens in our heads is so big. We all have such amazing imaginations, and we are predictive creatures. We predict things. So the more you can get it out of your head, it stops growing, and it allows you to deal with it, face it, decide if it's relevant or not, and let it go, or make a plan to deal with it and move on. So that third piece of empowerment: control, acceptance, and then growth. Growth is that piece where we say, this is what it is, and how do we move forward from here? So
absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Because when it comes to stressors and influences on our psyche, the hierarchy of needs plays a huge part. Food, shelter, how is that money coming in? And that's one of the reasons that I'm very grateful to Karen Birch for being here, because when it comes to employment, employability, if there's such a word, which I just made up perhaps, training, when it comes to just figuring out how we're going to be viable in this workforce. I find that, Karen, your work is fundamental. You work with youth, but I find that what you speak of traverses the lines of age. It's for everybody. How do we make ourselves, still relevant in light of what's happening here if we no longer can work how we used to?
Well, thank you. And I'm really excited to be here. I think one of the things that we're learning, and I think a lot of social service agencies are learning during this very unusual time, is that, number one, a lot of us are being brought together in a very unique way, but we're also shifting gears. And so an example for the agency that I represent is we have essentially done a 180, and we have created a brand new agency. And what we're learning through that is that we have an incredibly resilient team within that. And we are, as a leadership team, really being able to help empower our staff members to learn new skills or to hone in on some of the skills that they have an interest in. We've created a non-judgmental workplace, and I think that's been really important in terms of ensuring that the youth that are being supported in our community are coming at us with less fear and less anxiety about what is happening in the world. And when we talk about a non-judgmental workplace, we're talking about recognizing that some people might not be able to come in, and for some people, a workday for them might mean streaming a television show and connecting with their family And it might not mean putting stats into the computer. And we are seeing that as very important and very valuable work. And we're trying to spread that word to our community and to our contacts, because what we're seeing then is that our team is continuing to stay as healthy as they're able to, but they're also able to continue working with us in the capacity that they're able to, which has been so important.
Thank you for that. I think the fact that employers such as you and who you represent for your agency, understanding the need for that non-judgmental space, that safe space, the space to learn how to do work in a different way is absolutely key. So the onus isn't just on us finding new ways in our own spaces to make things work, but also in the systems that exist and how they run. I mean, working from home seemed like a luxury before that many places would not even consider. And now it's going to be you have to implement that as soon as possible in order to keep running. So I appreciate the fact that you came to speak on that, Karen Birch, and I appreciate your agency, which, by the way, you didn't say the name, you can feel free. You guys deserve props for what you're doing in recognizing and supporting your employees in the manner that you're supporting them. So thank you for that. And that actually brings us over. I want to speak to Helen Pierman-Ziral for a moment, who teaches on stress reduction and conflict management, because those stressors and worrying, how is the money going to come in? How are we going to do this? Too many people in the house, can't get out, creates a lot of opportunities for misunderstanding, miscommunication, conflict, and a lot of stress. And even though each person has talked about, mental wellness and balance and all these recommendations, there are always opportunities for us to explore that even more. So if you wouldn't mind, Helen, speaking more on stress reduction and conflict resolution.
Well, okay, I can sort of switch then, Kata, because I was actually going to, given what we were talking about today,
Yes.
I was going to talk about strengthening the self. So
absolutely.
Sure.
It's all about empowerment. That's our theme.
Okay. So I found as I was pulling myself together, and I have to be honest, I was upgrading Mark about 15 minutes ago. So my PowerPoint is not as I wanted it to be, so I'm not going to share it at this point. But I wanted to kind of speak to how do we empower ourselves. And one of the songs that I found was really helpful to me, and I'd be happy to share it with you so that you can post it later. It's an old song by J. Michael Josephs, but it was a song that for me many years ago was made popular by Louise Hay. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but it's something that I think we probably as individuals need to remember right now. And I'll just sort of say it very quickly, and then I'll go into the aspects of how we can continue to strengthen ourselves and empower ourselves. And the first verse of that song is, I love myself the way I am. And I think that's something we need to remind ourselves of at this point in time. And I'll just very, very quickly read the first verse. I love myself the way I am. There's nothing I need to change. I'll always be the perfect me. There's nothing to rearrange. I'm beautiful and capable of being the best me I can. And I love myself just the way I am. So as we're feeling stressed and exasperated, I think sometimes we do need to step back and love ourselves. So I'm looking at some things that we can do to continue to love ourselves. And one is to, first of all, take time for ourselves in the midst of everything that's going on. Going glam, how many of us kind of get dustied up, dressed up each day? I mean, we probably go around in, our night clothes and so forth. So why not get, it doesn't have to be fancy, but just kind of have a little bit of routine around the going glam, putting on maybe a little bit of jewelry or a fragrance or something that's going to make you feel good. And just enjoying some simple rituals, some self-love. What are some of the things that we can do to make ourselves feel better? I heard earlier about, keeping a journal. I heard earlier about, doing some little exercise and so forth. So this would be part of us enjoying those simple pleasures. And another thing to do is to tap into our inner child. Often we forget our inner child, and if we can tap into that inner child and allow the inner us to blossom and to shine forth, and then just keep in touch with ourselves in terms of who we are and our challenges, and just dig deep and know that we can muster through this. And most of all, coming back to how I started, just remembering to love ourselves the way I am. How many of us look in a mirror and as we get up in the morning or at any point in time and say to that image that we see in the mirror, I love you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Helen. Yes, you know what? Powerful words. And for those who may not be familiar with Louise Hayes, she's someone who has passed, who brought the self-help movement to a level that we can now enjoy today. She's a fundamental stalwart when it comes to self-help, healing techniques, positive philosophy. The Hay House turns out lots of materials that are self-help based, and actually I have a few friends who absolutely creates amazing content for Hay House. So definitely look that up if you're not familiar. And speaking of loving oneself and, you know, building that power from within and healing, that brings me to Essie Bakhari, who speaks on resiliency from the standpoint of living through a life that most of us would say is not humanly possible to live through. And he has. And he comes forward to talk about resiliency and empowerment and shares briefly with us how he did so. Thank you so much, Essie, for being with us. Oh, you're on mute. Hold on one moment here. There we go. Thank you.
Hi, hi everyone. Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be invited anywhere, actually, in these days. You know, I believe this: I cannot transmit something that I don't have. And what I mean by that is, you know, through everything that I've been through in my life, you know, I believe that I have the answer. I have all the answers in my heart. I just have to ask the right question. I really love what everybody said regarding being grateful, regarding meditation, regarding physical. Even before I do this talk, I went and did a run because I knew every time that I exercise, something happened, that I'm in a better mood. Especially I've been suffering from depression, trauma, all the things that I've been through. And this would be my suggestion and for empowerment. You know, when I get up in the morning, the only thing that I think about is like my eyes hasn't even opened yet, and it's all usually negativity and thoughts like bombarded. So what I do usually, I bend in my knees and I meditate and I pray to something and calm myself down. And then I think about the things that I'm grateful for, and then what I do also, connection. Human connection, like what we do now. You know, I have one individual, I have many, but one individual we all have to talk about all these scary things, deepest fears that we hide. We build walls and we open ourselves, and as a result of that, who would have known, you know, you know, through darkness, where you can find lights. And that's my my experience. So thanks for asking me to share.
Thank you so much, Essie. We're about to open the floor after I move on to Masaba to talk about how to take care of these devices which are allowing us to even do this right now. So imagine something happens, whether it's a virus or some kind of phishing scheme that causes you to not be able to use your device anymore. That's what Masaba Mwambu is here to talk about, you know, to help us be wary of that and how to utilize this to the best of our abilities to stay connected. So before I get to Masaba and get to the floor so people can ask their questions, I just want to thank you for filling in these polls here. It's looking great. Please keep filling them in. These questions help us to shape this BeWISE space into what you would like it to be. Any questions that you do have for the space, throw it into the Q&A. You can throw anything you like into chat with regards to feedback as well, but there's opportunity for feedback at the end of the webinar. The Q&A allows me to see the questions immediately for any of the panelists that you see here that you've heard speak. And we're also going to engage in discussion after Masaba talks about IT and tech support. Now to you, Masaba.
Hello, everyone. Yes, in these days and times, our electronic devices, in their own small way, help empower us. They help us to connect to other people. And so we shouldn't allow them to be a source of frustration. So there's a few things that one can do to make sure that they help us. One are simple things like, keeping liquids away from your laptop. It is so easy to run your hand across and accidentally spill stuff on. So liquids and electronics do not get along. Simple things like, making sure you have some antivirus software that's on your computer, because these days there's a plethora of phishing sites, of malware. There's stuff that's like some really nasty stuff out there. So you don't want that to infect your computer. So keep it up to date. Keep on some antivirus software. But with the liquids as well, food is also a thing. A lot of us, I'm sure, I'm guilty as well. You're eating something over your keyboard. Well, it's not that good a thing. If you must do it, there's stuff that you can put over the keyboard, like a little plastic rubber membrane that will protect it. Because once that stuff goes in there, it's very difficult to get out. It also goes with anything that is, keep it in a place that's not too much dust. If you have animals around, make sure your cat is not crawling over your keyboard, because all those little hairs and stuff, will go in. So, as best you can. I understand that, in some cases that might not be possible, but just being aware is, you're halfway there. Another thing also, besides washing your hands when you go outside, our hands carry a lot of oils and stuff on there. So clean your hands off before touching your keyboard. It'll last longer. Like, I've seen keyboards where the letters have worn off because of oils and residue coming from people's hands. So you want it to last as long as you can. And just simple things like, when you pick it up, don't pick it up by your laptop up by the monitor part. Pick it up by the base. Don't yank on the power cord. Like, treat it as you would like to be treated. So I'll stop there.
I think it's so cool. Thank you. As I take a drink of water away from my keyboard. I think it's so cool that you say treat your device as you would want to be treated, which resonates very similarly to what Steffi said. Talk to yourself as if you're talking to a good friend. It's like this kindness just is so pervasive all across the board. So thank you. I see the polling jacking up yet again. That's great. And the questions, thank you. Please keep them coming. I have one here that I will just read off because it's got a couple pieces to it. I'm going to throw it out to you guys, and whoever wants to pick it up, just feel free. So one of the questions has to do with keeping young children entertained under the age of 7. Now, I had a little share today on Facebook that said something to the effect of, if you want to get a nap in and you don't want to be interrupted by your kids, just tell them, wake me up in 30 minutes so we can clean the house together. And you're guaranteed not to be bothered, right? So does anybody want to just throw in there, what ideas have you used or can you suggest for keeping little itty bitties busy and, on side? Yes, Day.
Make a suggestion. What we do in this house, excuse me, is we have things in bins. So for example, if we have a Lego time, it's almost like as the toddler's running towards the stove, we kick over the Lego and then it distracts them to play with that particular bin. But one thing I would suggest is, although it's hard to, places aren't necessarily dirty, they just get messy by the little kids, we put everything back into the bins. So if there's a Lego bin, we put the Lego bin back in, because out of sight, out of mind. So we have the Lego bin, we have the Play-Doh bin, we have the books. So each time we have a different activity, we sometimes will clean up that activity so that it seems almost anew for them later on. We don't expose everything that we have at one time. So if we're doing coloring, we might do one particular coloring book one time, and then do a huge coloring book that's been sitting in the back of the closet forever. That's the time to take it out. So it changes it up a little bit. They're now entertained with coloring online, and this is for a little bit older schooler ages. So they're going on Paint, making their pictures, printing them out, sending them to family members. They've made their own library. So imagination play is a huge time consumer. If you participate, it'll take longer. If you disappear too long, that's when they start coming at you all the time. There's the sleeping game where I have my 9-year-old read to me, and sometimes I might nod off and wake up and be looking at the pages. So I don't read face to face. We read or, side by side. And that gives me a little bit of a rest. And I find that she reads much better when I'm reading with her. And that's not something we can get a lot of time to do together. And one of the things that you posted for children meditation, Cloud Babies, love Cloud Babies, because it's something that they can listen to while they're drawing. It's a storytelling and a meditation. It's a little bit more excitable for those of you who are going to be using it at night. I only use it for my older 10-year-old, but and Google. There's so many ideas online that it's unbelievable. It's just a matter of finding that time to do that kind of research. And you want to do things with what you have handy at home. But there's so many things around the house that you can use. And if you don't have a lot of things around the house, then Google with what you do have, and you won't believe what comes up. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. That all sounds fantastic. When it comes to children, I mentioned earlier that we're pretty well empty nesters, but some of those things I know I would definitely employ when it comes to children. And there's always nieces. There's always, little ones that, you have to take care of, and you're thinking, what can I do? You mentioned, Day, having that time. As a person who works with trauma recovery coaching and helping others, supporting others in the area of resiliency development, I always tell people to create that time, create that bubble. And it doesn't have to be an extensive period of time. Earlier on in our table talks, I mentioned that bubble at the beginning and the end of the day, just the 5 minutes. After you wake up, the eyes open, you may want to just close them again and just think of nothing, think of something, do whatever you want. It's your 5 minutes. Create that bubble. And that way it allows us to balance and reset. Balancing and reset, we think of it as optional, but it's actually really integral to getting through a day and not stretching ourselves. That mask that we're told to put on ourselves before we put on our loved one, that's the same thing for life, is that bubble is our mask, just to be able to get through and be able to help ourselves and others. So thank you for that, Day. Did anyone else have something to contribute to how to keep young children entertained under the age of 7? Yes, Candace.
Hi. So a couple things from my side. Part of what I do, I am actually a play therapist and child psychotherapist as well. And I think it's important to recognize that if you have little people, especially under the age of 7, they have not got a very clear handle on what is going on. Life is different. They want to go out. They want to do all the things they're used to doing. My 4-year-old is constantly like, but why can't we go to the park? I don't get it, right? So I do think that there is a space here. There are a couple things that I would recommend. Day, I love all of your suggestions about sort of keeping the toys fresh and new. I think if you have children under 7, especially in this time when everything is so chaotic, it's really important to have like quiet time. So you don't necessarily have naps anymore, but you definitely have time where everybody has to go to their own space and be quiet. Like read a book, even if it's just zoning out, watching a bit of TV. I am okay with that in this point, just because everybody needs a bit of separation sometimes so that you can recharge. The other piece I would add to that very briefly is to think about when your child is kind of losing the plot a little bit, is that a message that it's time to reconnect? So often what I find, especially around dinner time and that you have those sort of witching hours, what I would say is if you can take 5 minutes to reconnect, you'll save yourself 40 minutes of fighting. So there will be days when, especially when we're in a rush, when we are stressed, when we are struggling, when we are going, just too busy, too much, that's when I find children often are the most difficult. And really that most difficult is because we're rushing them. We're not explaining. They're feeling unbalanced. And so if you can drop everything, sit on the floor just for 3 minutes and say, you know what, let's just have a hug. Let's just connect. That can make the difference between them being able to give you the time that you need to be able to help you with some of those tasks and being able for everybody to kind of stay calm and connected and feel better about how things are going.
Thank you so much. Those are great tips as well. Thank you both, Day and Candace. Did anyone else have anything to add to that particular question about children under 7? Excellent, excellent. The next question we have here is, since our environment, or if our environment is really at a higher percentage of clean right now, what suggestions can be made to actually keep it that way? Any thoughts on that for any of our panelists here?
Can you ask that again, that question?
Sure. If our environment is really at a higher percentage of clean, and I'll expand on that because, I've learned the same thing, and we're hearing the skies are clearing up, the waters are clearing up because we're being forced to stay put. So, the earth is regenerating as we speak, or as we are shut in. So this is not necessarily within the areas of expertise for each panelist here, but just from your own standpoint as a functioning citizen of where you are, what are ways that we can actually keep it this way as we start to ramp up again, and as the coronavirus is brought under control? What ways do you contribute to keeping the earth clean and healthy? Yes, Lise Marie.
So I've noticed just in my area here, walking around and taking my dog out and everything, I've noticed an incredible accumulation of garbage on the side of the roads. Whether that's from the winter time, as the snow melts, everything sort of appears again. What I've actually done is I've gone on Amazon and I ordered a reacher grabber. Sort of one of those things, senior citizens or people who need assistance there. So I've ordered one of those, and I've ordered a pair of dish gloves. And my plan is to go out without my dog and just by myself and go and clear up a certain section of a path that I walk every day with my dog. I don't really want to look at garbage. I see people just walking straight past it. It really bothers me. I come from a very environmentally conscious family. So seeing that is difficult. So I ordered a reacher grabber, and my goal is, once Amazon gets it to me, is to go out and spend an hour every couple of days or every 3 days or once a week just to pick up some stuff around my neighborhood, because my apartment is generally much cleaner than it was when I was working 3 jobs. So if I can take my control and my ability and my time and take it outside to spaces where I enjoy and I know other people enjoy, I might as well do that now that I have the time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yes,
absolutely, Elise Marie. Be the change you want to see. While the world has paused, nature has regenerated. So we have a huge opportunity to be kinder to the earth and to the world. So if you've been thinking about using less plastic, start to use less plastic. And no offense to Amazon, Elise Marie, but shop local if you can, right? I've done the Amazon orders too, but I called my local environment store Ecoexistence and said, what are you doing during this time? What can help you? I think we can all look at simple, small ways to be better to the earth. And if we have paused, we've paused for a reason. And out of crisis comes opportunity. So it's a great question. Look at the way, and it's always about one small thing. What one small thing can you incorporate in your life or in your household to help keep the earth cleaner?
Yes, absolutely. Great call to action. I'll come back to you, Elise Marie Masaba.
Yeah, one of the things that we've all done, we go through a lot of electronics and so over the years. And, you know, I look at the number of electronics that the kids have used in all the phones. Now, a lot of these gadgets have a lot of carcinogenic elements in them. So when their lifespan is done, they need to be disposed of in a proper recycled properly. If there's companies that do take them for recycling, absolutely do them. If you have, especially if there's broken screens and all that stuff, there's a lot of carcinogens in there. Dispose of them in the proper research of how to do it properly and get rid of them. Don't just chuck them anywhere, because it doesn't do our environment any good.
Absolutely, that's a great point, and thank you for that as well. Elise Marie.
Yeah, just sort of adding on to Steffi, there's lots of small local businesses here in Ottawa that are collecting the containers that they sell product in so that they can reuse them and put them back out on the shelves. Because one of the things I saw the other day, flour is in a huge deficit where nobody can find flour or yeast anymore. And one of the things I saw from one of the producers is that it's not flour itself, it's the containers that are in low production. So it's not necessarily that the resource is, it's just what holds it. So if you can return your containers or take your own containers to stores, especially small local businesses that do provide that. I know in Ottawa anyways, and same with technology, stores are accepting recyclables and containers so that they can reuse them for their products so that it's a little bit safer for the environment.
That's great. And thank you very much for that question and answers. Helen. And you're on mute.
Yeah, I took it off. It's more sort of a question concern than me adding anything. Finding when I go to the store, I don't drive at the moment. And when I go to the store, I used to take a recycled bag so that I could put my groceries in a recycled bag. But I find that the store that I shop at doesn't want people to bring in recycled bags. Whether the recycled bags are cloth or plastic, they don't want it. And what I'm finding, because they don't want recycled bags, is they're giving more plastic. So I'm ending up with more plastic bags, which I didn't want. And then the other piece is, I do wear gloves, the plastic gloves. And when I wear the plastic gloves, I have to dispose of them. So any ideas, suggestions, apart from using them as devices, as recyclable containers, et cetera, et cetera?
That's a great question. You know, as we're trying to, all the different systems are trying to adjust and deal with what we're dealing with, we're kind of almost working in contradiction to some of the environmental supports that we had in place before. So we're adjusting. Any ideas from the floor with regards to Helen's questions? Yes, Elise Marie, and then Candace. Yes.
I just put it in the chat there, but if you can ask the store for any boxes that they have as refuse, if they're willing to pack that in boxes. No, hey, oh my goodness.
I'm curious about the chain.
I find what they're doing is they're obviously doing some orders for people, but boxes and all that kind of stuff, they're not even making that kind of thing available. It's like there's, you know, like the other day I went in and the security guard even wanted to spray my gloves, my brand new plastic gloves that I put on. But why? It's a glove. Why does it need to be sprayed? She said, this is what I've been told to do. So I don't know how clear some of the messages are around what it is that we should be doing to protect ourselves and each other. Some places are just kind of going a little bit overboard.
Yeah, I think everyone is trying to employ their own measures to protect their employees, protect, you know, people who are coming in, and there is not one surefire like list of things to do. So everyone is just becoming creative and doing for themselves. In some cases, it can be, you know, inequitable for some of the stories that I hear. And then and other times it can be quite lax and people don't feel safe going into those spaces. So it's quite varied. Candace, did you have something to put in here?
Yeah, I was just saying, I was just thinking about, there is some research coming out now looking at the effect of high heat on COVID-19. So if you want to kind of be a little more conservative in terms of what you're doing for yourself, if you are using, instead of plastic gloves, you can use cloth gloves and hand sanitizer and then gloves. And then what you do is you put them in the dryer on as high a heat as you can for 20 to 30 minutes, and then that will kill any virus that's on them. So that helps you to cut down on the single-use plastic gloves all the time, as long as you're kind of combining it with hand sanitizer where you can, or actual, just even better than that, actual hand washing with soap. Then that's going to help. Just very briefly, the other thing that I was thinking about in my household, I apologize for the feedback.
No.
Talk about cats on the keyboard. In my household, a lot of what's happening right now is we're in this weird space where we're not consuming the way we have normally. So we're not going out for fast food. We're not going out for, you know, buying the same quantity of stuff. We're not producing as much garbage. I really thought being home 24/7, I would have like way more garbage than what my allotted amount is, and yet we don't. And so I think this is a great space, if we're looking at protecting the environment, to really think for a second about, what do we actually need? Like, when we come out of this, how much of this stuff that we've been doing do we actually need to do? And so it's such a great opportunity to reset and to think about, what am I going to keep with me from this time moving into the new normal? Because it's not going to be the same. So yeah, so for saving the earth, I mean, we clearly don't need as much as we like to think we need. And this time right now is proof of that. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well said. A lot of transition, a lot of rejigging the way that we perceive what is needed, what's absolutely necessary versus just enough. It's enough, right? Because we've been forced into a space of having just enough. And also we've seen a lot of hoarding going on, a lot of different types of habits going on, as well as stocking up. You know, everyone's got their own thing, but I think that it's really highlighted for us what state we're in. I think the whole ability to distract ourselves by going to work or doing this or that and the other has been somewhat put to the side, because now we're forced to look at stuff. We're absolutely forced to look at it and ask the questions. I mean, you can only Netflix so much for so long, right? So some would argue not, but hey, on average, you can only do so much.
Right. Kata, and empowerment, to Candace's point, means peace of mind.
Yes.
We've all had to sit with ourselves a little bit more. Michelle, you talked about that too, with mental health. And it's scary for people at first. You know, I've talked to some clients, they're like, oh my goodness, I've just had a horrible thing happen. I could distract myself with going out and going drinking or going here, going there. I have to sit in it. And I'm like, yeah, you got to sit in it. And it's painful. But boy, oh boy, if you move through it, you are more powerful. And you talk about empowerment, you are more empowered. Instead of avoiding trauma and pain, and S.E. can speak to that more than most of us can, instead of avoiding it, you have to sit in it and learn to live with it. And when you go quiet, you touch base with your creative intelligence, which is through you all the time, but we let noise and distraction and busyness take it away, don't we?
Yes. I mean, we're trained that way. And Day, I do see your hand. I will come to you for sure. When it comes to resiliency, that piece of going through the pain to come out to the other side, we're not actually conditioned that way. We're taught from very young to avoid pain, to avoid anything that brings displeasure. And so it's almost like a re-socializing, a rejigging, creating new synaptic connections that allow us to understand that not that we're running towards pain, we're not trying to incur or create situations for pain, but allowing ourselves to look at what may have already been have happened in our lives in a different way, turning it around. And COVID-19 is another opportunity for us to do that collectively. You know, to Steffi's point, and to the point of everyone who's been on this panel so far, is that we actually have the opportunity to contribute to redefining, rejigging what this all means. It doesn't just have to mean what the latest announcement or update has been from whatever government we're looking at. It's also our collective experience as individuals, as professionals, as mothers and aunties and uncles and everything. And so that's why I love these types of spaces, whether it be BeWISE or whatever online space that brings people together. This information sharing is key to how we come out of this. It's absolutely key. Dave, you had a point that you want to make or a question?
No, just to back up what Steffi was saying, and also yes. I heard when Candace was mentioning about get things out of your head, which is important when it comes to meditation and all of these helping ourselves to heal from trauma. You can get a lot of flashbacks as well. And I just want to remind everyone, there's so many resources that are available to us that before, during, and I'm sure after, that are affordable, that are free, that if you can safely do so, definitely try to tap into some of those professional resources to help you through. I mean, it's so important how to deal with flashbacks. It's going to happen regardless, and how to get through it when you have flashbacks and you're on your own. So definitely, I mean, what everyone said is yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And remember, there are actual links that have been shared with you on the side here in the chats, and please keep up the polling. I have another question here that I want to get us to. It has to do with resources, financial, emotional, mental support that's being offered specifically to seniors is the question. Did anyone want to speak on that? Okay, so what I'll do is I will put, at least Maria is laughing. Now I'll speak briefly on it, but I also will put a pin in that, and also because we also have upcoming panelists that deal directly with that area. Yes, Day, you had something you want to say. You're muted right now.
Well, I think that's a very important question. I am living with a senior as well, and they do feel it's a frightening time, and they're constantly blaring on the radio, another senior's dying, another senior's home has been hit. So that's a very valid question. They feel unsupported. They feel emotionally, financially. There's a general feeling of, well, the seniors are still getting their income that they were getting before, so what's the problem? So I think that's definitely a good question as well, and I hope to hear it get addressed soon.
Yeah, it absolutely will get addressed in this space. And what I'd also like to say, just in direct answer to that, is we have different areas of influence for each of us, regardless of what our age is. We have a very intimate circle with whom we share so many things, or we rely upon for support and information. And then the circle widens out to other trustworthy areas. Now, in my area of policing, I've just retired from 27 years with the Toronto Police, but during that time, we had a lot of unfortunately, too many investigations that involved seniors being taken advantage of. And that is still happening. Even in light of this shut-in, people are now online sending messages saying, you have to do this, send money here, because we can access our banking online right now. So what I would say to that is go to police service sites. That's one thing. If you know someone who is older, or you're living with someone who is older that's seeking information, when you're sending them to look for resources and information, government sites only. Government, policing, that sort of thing, those are vetted. And they can actually redirect you to somewhere else if you're looking for something in the private sector, perhaps, or you're looking for some kind of support, or if you've been called and told that you owe money. Police never contact anyone to pay money. The government never contacts anyone via phone or the internet to say you must pay money. In fact, as frauds have proliferated or gotten, much more, it's been very specific, the way in which governments and police will interact with citizens nowadays. So if you know people who are older and wondering, and especially people who live alone and have to rely on information resources outside of their home, please reach out and let them know, hey, you know what, you're thought of, you're supported. Please make sure if someone's calling you for money that you vet it through another person. Even if it's a bill that actually is owed, and you're scared because you actually owe money for hydro or whatever it may be, you still vet it to another person. And none of these systems take money mart transfers or require those cards. You know, I've forgotten which, there's so many of them now, but those payable cards, none of us, no system actually takes payment that way. So there's a lot of information available, and we will dedicate a space to the financial, emotional, and mental support when it comes to our older population, because, you know, I find that in some spaces we actually do not properly honor the elders that we have in our societies, and they're the backbone. You know, those are the shoulders we're standing upon, and they're the spine of what we're able to live today. Now we are actually at 3 o'clock. Funny enough, time just flies right by. So I am going to wrap us up. That's the last question we're able to take. And if you have any other questions, please throw it in feedback. If you have suggestions or recommendations of people that you would like to see in the space, throw that in the feedback as well. You'll receive that as soon as our table talk is done. I want to thank all of the panelists for your time and for your expertise and the energy that you've contributed to this. It's been fantastic, and hope to see you again soon. Does anybody else have anything that you want to say before we cut this? Thank you. And peace to everyone. Wishing you the best. Stay safe, be well, and informed and empowered. Take care.